What if events had unfolded differently in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man? What if Peter Parker and Harry Osborn got bit by the spider? What do you think would have happened? What do you think would have changed? Well, welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to a brand new episode. We're continuing the series with part 3 today of the series, and I cannot wait to jump right into this. We got a huge cliffhanger. Harry ended up giving the mantle of Spider-Man up at the end of the second part, and the Silver Spider is no more. And Peter Parker has officially become Spider-Man, and Green Goblin lives. Norman Osborn was able to escape, and now we're going to see what would happen if these two heroes were in Spider-Man 2. We're kind of dipping into the Spider-Man 2 timeline. But that being said, my fellow watchers, let's keep manipulating the events of the multiverse to see what would have happened. Harry knew that he could not lie to himself any longer. He was jealous of Peter, and there was no denying it. Peter was better at him at school and at being a superhero. Harry did not have the heart to do what Peter did. It was 2 years after he had hung up his suit as the Silver Spider. The media had a field day about what had happened to him. There were many rumors about why Silver Spider disappeared, but none came close to the truth. After a few months, the rumors died down, and the people forgot that there were 2 Spider-Men in the first place. Harry got wind of the news that Mary Jane and Peter Parker were getting serious. That is, they were now dating. Harry could not say that he was surprised, as they had really gotten close after the Expo attack. While Harry had fought with his dad, Peter had rescued Mary Jane. Speaking about his father, Harry had not seen him after the incident, as Norman had gotten a leave from work to go and cure himself of the Green Goblin. Because of this, Harry was elevated to being a board member of Oscorp through his father's influence. 2 of the board members had died at the Expo incident, and it was normal that they should be replaced. But Harry knew that he was not deserving of the position. The progress of finding a cure to the illness in general was going so well. It also made it easier for Norman to promote Harry to the position of a board member without any argument from the others, as he had made great progress in the medical field. The board members were also afraid of Norman, as they deduced that everybody who tried to oppose him or deprive of him of anything had ended up dead. Harry could not blame them, as he knew that they would be scared out of their minds if they knew that Norman was really the Goblin. Harry was then told by his secretary that he had a lunch meeting with someone, and that brought him out of his thoughts. That someone was Peter Parker. Location: a local sushi restaurant. Time: 12:12 p.m. Peter Parker always cherished his meetings with Harry, as it was one of the safe spaces in his life. Harry was the only person he could tell his problems to, and by problems, he meant being Spider-Man. Peter told Harry how hard it was juggling both his job at the Daily Bugle, college, and being Spider-Man. Harry also found it amusing when Peter complained to him, because anytime he offered to pay him some commission so he could stop working, Peter refused. Peter always said that he wanted to only get his money by working for it, and Harry could understand that. Harry just encouraged him and told him to push it on. They talked about the happenings of the city and their progress in their respective fields. As they ate their ordered lunch, Harry told Peter that he was going to see Dr. Octavius tomorrow. Peter's mind was blown, and when he asked why Harry was going on the trip, the latter replied that Oscorp wanted to invest in his research, and he was sent to check whether it was worth it. Peter was really excited, as Dr. Octavius was his idol. Peter was also currently writing a project in school about Dr. Octavius, and it was the subject of his paper. Peter asked Harry if he could tag along with him to the event, and his request was quickly granted. Harry stated that it was no problem. He even needed an accomplice as the meeting could get too boring. Peter quickly debunked the statement, as he stated that Octavius was anything but boring. While they talked, Peter picked up a signal that a robbery was going on at a bank on the other side of the city. Using his resources and gadgets gotten from Harry, Peter had been able to hack into the police radio channel. This enabled him to know whenever crimes are being committed and where. "I need you, Harry. This city still needs you," Peter told Harry as he stood up to go. Harry told him that he could not go back, that he preferred working in the lab now. "The days of the Silver Spider are over," Harry said. Peter laughed and said that it was fun how things turned out. Who would have thought that Harry Osborn would even enjoy working in the lab? Peter laughed as he exited the restaurant. "Yeah, who would have thought?" Harry said, as the earlier sense of jealousy he had felt got reinstated. Immediately it came. Harry brushed it aside as he remembered that Peter was his best friend, and they had made an oath to be brothers forever. As Peter swung through the city, he thought of how messy his life was right now. If Harry had not been paying for his apartment, he knew he would have been struggling to eat and pay up rent. The money that he was paid by the Daily Bugle was not enough for him, as he had started college and he needed a huge pay raise. Peter knew that he could not get that from J. Jonah Jameson. Parker had also left out the relationship problems that he was currently facing with Mary Jane. Mary Jane's compliment was that he was never around and that he was hiding something from her. She stated that she felt it, and Peter knew that it was not far from the truth. Peter had talked with Harry about coming out with the truth to Mary Jane recently. The latter strongly advised against it. He stated that it would endanger her more. Peter also figured that merely staying around her would also endanger her, especially now that the Green Goblin knew their identities. Even though Harry had said that Norman was under control, Peter was still very wary of him. Peter landed on a building as he wanted to analyze the whole situation before he jumped into stopping the robbery. The robbers were 4 numbers plus the getaway driver, who made them 5. Right now, they had already finished robbing the bank, and they had loaded their loot into the van. As they were about to drive away, Peter decided to strike. Peter shot his webs and glued the 4 tires of the van to the road so that they could not move. Once the driver came out to check what the problem was, Peter landed on top of the van and dragged him, even as he covered his mouth with webs. The other 4 robbers were shocked as the driver was suddenly snatched up. They became scared, but quickly decided to get out of the car at the same time to take care of the threat together. They got out of the car simultaneously with their guns, aimed at the roof of the van, but they only found the driver glued there. The gang leader immediately heard screams from his comrades, and before he knew it, they were all glued to the bank wall. He spotted Spider-Man on top of the rooftop and opened fire as he was infuriated. Spider-Man quickly took cover, even as police cars pulled up. The sirens of the police distracted the gang leader, and before he knew it, he started flying up as he screamed in terror. When he finally came to his senses, he discovered that he was hanging on a streetlight, and his gun was snatched away from him. This was why the robber was surprised when he heard the police officers shouting that he should put his hands where they could see them. Immediately, he discovered that they were referring to Spider-Man, who was busy goofing around with the policemen as they aimed their guns at him. Peter did a backflip and swung away. It worried him how he had been helping the city for the past 2 years, but they still treated him like an outlaw. As he swung past a news broadcast by J. Jonah Jameson, he concluded that the owner of the Daily Bugle was surely not helping matters, as he called him a menace every single day. "At least I'm getting paid," Peter said as he laughed. Location: Dr. Octavius's lab, 9:03 a.m. The meeting with Dr. Octavius was very exciting for Peter. Randomly, Peter remembered that the last time he was this excited for a trip, he and Harry got his powers. Immediately, Harry and Peter met with Octavius. It was evident that he was loved. Dr. Octavius always loved a young, promising scientist, and Peter far exceeded that. After talking for a little bit, they got seated, as Octavius started his pitch with his wife as an assistant. The pitch went well, but Peter was worried that the experiment might go very wrong. When Harry asked Peter what he thought about the experiment, Peter told him about his fears. That night, Harry and Peter were invited for dinner, and Dr. Octavius was told their fears. Octavius playfully downplayed their fears, as he told them that there was no way that anything could go wrong. Octavius said that he had already checked and cross-checked every procedure and everything. His wife supported him by stating that he had done his homework. Peter just hoped that everything would work out, as it would be a great breakthrough in science for Dr. Octavius and Harry Osborn too. After dinner, they all said their goodbyes and went their separate ways, as the next day was the experiment. It was 10 a.m. the next day, and Peter was right. The experiment went wrong. Really wrong. In order to perform the sustained fusion experiment, Octavius developed a set of artificially intelligent mechanical arms. The arms were immune to the heat and magnetism. This made it very easy for Ock, as he could control the tentacles with his brain. The experiment was going very well until it started becoming unstable. When the experiment started overloading, Dr. Octavius refused to shut it down, as he knew that he could not quit now. The results of this single decision changed his life forever. Because of the overloading and instability, the experiment exploded, and Dr. Octavius's wife, who was his assistant, got killed as a piece of shattered glass pierced her skull. This was just the beginning of the consequences, as the inhibitor chip got destroyed. The chip prevented the advanced AI of the arms from controlling Octavius's mind. After the chip was destroyed, it granted them unrestricted access to Doc Ock's mind. As the fire and destruction spread, Peter and Harry did their best and tried to save the other civilians, without showing off much of their powers to rouse suspicions. As they have saved the civilians, Dr. Octavius was still in pure agony, as the arms were fused to his spine. Soon after that, he became unconscious. After that, Peter and Harry carried his body out of the room, as it was still on fire. Shortly after, Dr. Octavius was taken to a hospital to have the arms removed, as Peter and Harry could not remove them, even with their super strength. While in the theater of the operation, the tentacles developed their own ability to move at will and brutally killed the surgeons. They started calling Octavius their father and aided him in escaping the hospital. Dr. Octavius took refuge at an abandoned site, even as the news of what he had done spread like wildfire. J. Jonah Jameson had already coined a name for him. He was called Dr. Octopus because of the tentacles. They stated that he was very dangerous, and if spotted, he should be reported to the authorities. Meanwhile, in the abandoned site, the tentacles were doing a number on Dr. Octavius's brain, as they were influencing him negatively. They cohered him enough, and he decided to complete his experiment at all costs. Octavius was under the full control of the tentacles, and he was out for vengeance of the death of his wife. Peter felt guilt for the death of Dr. Octavius's wife, as he had known that something was wrong. Peter knew that he should have stopped the experiment in the first place. Octavius was being controlled by the tentacles, and his wife was dead. Peter was just lying down on his bed as he recounted the events of that day. He had just watched the news, and he saw what Octavius did to the surgeons. It was gruesome. Peter knew that Octavius was a sweet old man, and he could not possibly do what they were accusing him. Peter then quickly deduced that the inhibitor chip that had stopped the tentacles from controlling him must have been destroyed in the explosion. That gave Peter a small feeling of hope that Dr. Octavius could still be saved. After that, Peter had gone out in his Spider-Man suit, as he scanned the city for any traces of Octavius, but he came up with nothing. Parker had just arrived back at home after a gruesome but futile search. Few moments after he had laid on his bed, his doorbell rang, and he dragged himself up from his bed. "I really need a vacation," Peter said, but immediately he saw the visitor. He beamed up, and it was Mary Jane. Peter and Mary Jane quickly got talking about their day. MJ exclaimed that Peter was very lucky to be alive, as he recounted the events of the explosion to her. When Peter asked her how her day went, she just stated that her acting show went well. Peter then remembered that he was supposed to attend the show and see her performance, but he totally forgot. Peter quickly started apologizing that he had totally forgotten about the event. Mary Jane just stated that it was okay because he had just escaped death. "Besides, I had company," Mary Jane said. This piqued Peter's interest, and he quickly inquired who it was. Mary Jane told him that it was John Jameson, the son of J. Jonah Jameson. This quickly got Peter jealous. Mary Jane sensed his change in emotion and started giggling as she found it funny. She told Peter not to worry, that she was not leaving him anytime soon. Peter inquired how they met, and Mary Jane narrated the experience. MJ stated that he had helped her out when a rogue customer wanted to molest her at the restaurant where she worked. After that, they became friends, even though she had informed him that she was dating. Peter quickly asked MJ why she had not told him about this piece of information from the very beginning. This enraged Mary Jane, and she stated that it was because he was rarely around. This silenced Peter, as he knew that this was one argument he could not win. Mary Jane also accused Peter of not telling her everything, as she still felt that he was hiding something from her. Peter quickly changed the subject as he inquired when her next show was. MJ knew his intentions, but she obliged him. Her next show was tomorrow, and Peter swore that he would attend the event to see her perform. "Unless I will start considering John's request," Mary Jane said, as she cuddled up against him and slept. Peter had trouble sleeping that night, while Mary Jane slept with a smirk on her face. Abandoned power plant. Time, 8:40 p.m. Norman had decided to keep everything under wraps, as he did not want to attract the attention of Harry or Peter. He knew that they were constantly monitoring him, so he traveled out on a vacation. Currently, Norman was back in the city, and he was on a hunt for Dr. Octopus. Norman had seen the news, and he was very delighted. Now, the Green Goblin had total control of him, but he had been dormant until the news of Dr. Octopus was shown. The Green Goblin had been biding his time, looking for ways to defeat Spider-Man and his son, and possibly get them to join him. When he saw the news, he immediately decided to get Dr. Octopus on his side. The Goblin smiled, as he had successfully locked in on Octopus's location. He knew that the metal used in making his tentacles was made one of a kind, and it gave out a different kind of signal. Norman had utilized this to lock in on Dr. Octopus's location. "It's time to do this," the Goblin said to himself, as he entered Ock's lair. Harry's apartment. Time, 8:46 p.m. Harry could not believe it. His father was in town. Harry had set up a tracker in the city to alert him whenever his father was around. Harry hacked into the security cameras around the area that Norman was sighted, and he noticed that it was an abandoned area. Harry was confused as to the purpose of Norman in such an area. Then it came to him. "Of course," Harry shouted, as he came to the realization that Norman was going to meet Dr. Octopus. Harry quickly set out to stop his father. Harry considered calling Peter, but he quickly decided against it, as he wanted to be the hero this time. In addition, Harry did not know what Peter would do if he laid his eyes on his father. Harry could not take that risk, and he decided that he would go and talk some sense into his father. Putting on his jacket, Harry stepped out of his apartment in search of his father. Harry looked out at the sky, and he briefly considered swinging through the city, but he decided against it. Those days of his life were over, Harry concluded as he entered into his car. Harry was shocked at the scene he witnessed when he got to the location. Harry saw an injured Norman on the floor, while Doc Ock fled the scene. Harry quickly ran to the aid of his father, who looked pretty surprised to see him. Harry decided against asking his father for the details of what transpired until he was properly treated. Using his super strength, Harry lifted Norman on his shoulders as he took him to his car. Norman had an evil grin on his face when Harry was not looking. Everything was going according to plan. He knew that Harry was coming to find him, and he wanted him to. Norman had given Dr. Octavius the tritium he needed to fuel his reactor, and when Harry came, he told him to flee. After that, he had an injury to gain: Harry's pity and trust. After Harry had treated Norman, Norman decided that he would lie to him. Norman would tell him that he wanted redemption because of the damage he had done, that he wanted to capture Dr. Octopus by himself. He knew his son, Harry, would buy into it, without suspecting a thing. Everything went according to the Green Goblin's plans. Peter was already prepared to go to Mary Jane's show when the signal came. Dr. Octopus had been spotted, and Peter knew how much the show meant to MJ, but he quickly decided that sadly, the lives of the people of the city were more important. Peter immediately undressed and wore the spider suit. Within seconds, he was already swinging through the city as he contacted Harry to come and aid him to combat Dr. Octopus. When Peter arrived at the scene, he immediately jumped into action without waiting for Harry. As Ock was so focused on his reactor, Peter thought that he could jump him from behind, but he did not know that Ock's tentacles had a mind of their own. The tentacles swiftly fended him off and captured him. The tentacles started squeezing the life out of him, and Peter knew in his mind that this could very well be the end of the road for Spider-Man. The only thing he could think of was Mary Jane. As Peter was losing consciousness, and his vision was getting darker, even as his ribs started breaking, he felt the pressure around him suddenly lessen. He was dropped and he landed flat on the ground. He saw Harry combating Dr. Octopus, but he couldn't just afford to distract him with his webs and reflexes. As Harry watched on, before he passed out, he saw Norman coming towards him with a sinister grin on his face, and sudden terror filled him. Peter tried to open his mouth to scream, but he did not have the strength to even shout. Norman approached him and swiftly injected a serum into his arm as Peter was helpless. Peter felt sudden fever and drowsiness come upon him, and he started shivering. Norman quickly called on Harry to watch over Peter as he had started acting out while he took care of Ock. Immediately Harry came over and Peter passed out, and Dr. Octopus fled. After a brief confrontation with Norman, Harry started having some suspicions regarding the conduct of his father, as Peter was burning up, and he knew, as it was not inflicted on him by Ock. Harry also suspected that the fact that the Green Goblin was still controlling his father, and they were working with Otto. Harry decided that he would save the investigation for later, as he had to take care of Peter. With Norman's help, they carried him to safety. Harry carried Peter to his apartment. Harry's lab. Time: 1:02 p.m. Peter had strange nightmares that night. He dreamt of himself being pursued by a giant spider, but in the end, a goblin-like figure always managed to squash the spider before it reached him. Peter also had visions of himself swinging through the city, and deep within him, it sort of made sense, but he knew it was not possible. He was just plain old Peter Parker. When Peter woke up, he saw himself in the lab, wearing a strange costume which he quickly recognized as Spider-Man's outfit. Peter was cracking his head on how he ended up in his current state when Harry walked in. "Finally, a familiar face," Peter said, and he proceeded to ask Harry why he was wearing a Spider-Man costume, as he was too old for Halloween. Harry thought that it was one of Peter's old jokes, but further inquiries led him to discover that Peter did not remember his alter ego. Peter Parker did not know that he was Spider-Man. Harry carried out a series of tests, and he discovered that it was as if Peter's powers had vanished, along with his memories too. Peter complied with the tests as he felt that Harry was goofing around, but then he suddenly remembered. "Mary Jane," Peter shouted, as he quickly changed into his normal clothes and ran out to meet and apologized to Mary Jane for missing the show. Strangely enough, Peter remembered dressing for the show, but he did not remember what happened after and why he could not attend. He sincerely hoped that he would be forgiven. As Peter ran out, Norman, who was viewing the events that transpired in the lab from a video feed, laughed manically as the Green Goblin, as he just discovered that his serum had worked. Peter Parker was no more Spider-Man. Norman had been busy throughout his absence by using his time to create and invent new gadgets and things to help him in his quest. "This is the end of the beginning," Green Goblin said, as he cackled manically. Meanwhile, Dr. Octavius was going through his research work that he had managed to steal back, and he marveled at just how powerful his experiment was. "Yes, Father, we can use it to destroy them, to avenge our mother," the tentacles sang in their heads. Dr. Octopus then concluded that he was going to do just that. He would destroy the whole city with his fusion reactor, and there would be nobody who could stop him. And that is going to be part 3 of What If Peter Parker and Harry Osborn Got Bit by the Spider. Now, what did you think of part 3? I personally found, I don't know why, but after I record these, I'm like, this keeps getting better in my opinion. I don't know if you're thinking the same thing, but this is such a fun series to do. You know, it's kind of a callback to the original What If Harry Osborn Got Bit by the Spider, because that was such a fun series. It was such a fun time to be a MissedThePart fan, I think, because at that time I was just, getting into what ifs, but that was kind of what sparked this channel, I think, to, move forward. But to really showcase what would have happened if Peter and Harry got bit, it really brings in alternate perspectives, and I think it really makes the story even better. It makes it completely different to, what we're used to. And I think, having Norman there really works out well. And having the Spider-Man No More story is very interesting too. But what did you think of part 3? I hope that you guys enjoyed part 1 and 2. I'm going to continue to post more and more as, the weeks come along. But thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. And if you guys do enjoy these videos, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. But that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.